Rents are still rising across the UK, but the way that rental property is valued has changed. And the latest ONS data shows that the average UK rent, private rent, were 3.5% higher than a year ago, reaching to April 2026, which is sitting at £1,380 per month. Now, in London, that's slightly slower at 2%. Prime London, well, that picture is more complicated. So, when we look at rental property, it's no longer about the question as to what can the landlord achieve, but rather what can the landlord really justify. In this video, I'm not just going to give you a simple checklist as to go to Rightmove and justify a high rent or even a low rent if you're a tenant. I'm actually going to show you how a property consultant advisor actually approaches an increase in 2026. Especially in London, where it's more sensitive, more segmented and more regulated. So we're going to review what the Renters Act has changed, Section 13, but also the wider market in the UK and in London. So if you're a landlord or a tenant currently going through a rent review, this is a video that you do want to watch. London had the lowest regional inflation at 2%. The North East, the highest at 6.5%. If we look at Landlords, the specialist that gives us data in prime London, they say that whilst it was 2% higher over the Q1 compared to Q1 in 2025, we can see that prime central London, well, that's up by 2.6%. And yields overall are up, and it's almost 5%. Now, this is where rental valuation gets misunderstood, because headline says one thing, rents are going up, and immediately everyone thinks that everything is going up equally. But rental property is hyper-local. And if we look at a property, a family home in Hampstead, for example, 3 bedrooms, can be doing something very different to a studio in Soho. So let's look into that a little bit more in detail. Because Landlords data shows us that demand is higher on the lower end of the market. In fact, if we look at rental property that's £5,000 and above, that is where demand is weaker. So what seems to be reasonable as a percentage increase across the UK may be different to a certain part of prime London. Here are some key points as we've entered into the Renters' Rights Act. So as from May 1st, 2026, those rent increase clauses that you had in your contracts that automatically increased are no longer valid. To increase rent, you must serve Section 13, Form 4A. You have to give at least 2 months notice, and it has to land on, the notice starts from the rental period. I'll have more information on the link on the description about that. Rent cannot be above open market rental prices. Tenants can challenge the rent increase via the tribunal, and rent can usually only increase once per year. So before the Renters' Rights Act, rents were usually handled by the renewal. A negotiation will start between landlord and tenant. You'll agree a fixed term, you'll agree a rental price as well. But now you are now moving into a evidence-based rental increase. So if you're a landlord watching this, this is how a property advisor would generally approach a rental review. So of course, first one is achieved rent. For landlords and general public, that may be slightly challenging, but you may not have the data at the back end. So your best approach may be calling agents and finding out, because what a rental property is on the market for and where it actually achieves can be 2 very different things. But it is something to consider. So the second one is looking at the current rental stock and see how long those rental properties have been on the market. For example, if a property is on the market for 8 weeks, 12 weeks and hasn't achieved that rental, then it may be ambitious. We also look at the condition of the property. Online, the condition of the property can look one way. In actuality, it could be completely different. So if you have the time and go and visit these properties as a landlord or tenant to compare, then that should be a good thing that you could do. And then we look at micro local area, because one property is doing on one street, even if it's parallel on another street, that can change substantially. So you need to understand the local market and why one road may achieve more than another. It could be it's busy, it could be it has a park close by, it could be it's noisy, it could be a number of things. And if you're finding this video helpful, make sure you smash that like button. It really does motivate me in pushing more of these videos out there. And here is a major factor, tenant profile. Because the reality is a property that's going to appeal to a corporate client or tenant or international students typically will achieve more money. So if you're comparing one property that's not really appealing to that target audience, but another that is, you need to factor that in. And the other point is timing. If you are coming to the end of winter, you generally are going to achieve a better rental price. And in the same way, going into summer, here in London for example, summer or the end of summer is when you achieve the best possible prices in the city. So you can almost plan accordingly or price ahead of time, but you also need to take the current market into consideration, because not all years are equal. And then we go into price bands. As we saw from Landlords, on the higher end of the market, it can be slower. Property of £10,000 is going to be doing something slightly different to a property that's £3,000 per calendar month. The £3,000 a market is going to move quicker, and the pricing is also going to align in the same way. Whereas the higher end, it's not unusual for a property to be on the market for a more period of time. So what's the best way that landlords and tenants can avoid disputes? From a landlord point of view, is having genuine comparables, making sure you've done your homework and you file those accordingly. From a tenant perspective, now if you choose to challenge this, well, you need to look at the evidence as well and make a decision based on what's actually on the market in the same area, same condition of property. And remember, a condition of property also includes not just the size of the property, but also ceiling heights, big windows, gardens, outside space, all those type of things. And here is one part that a lot of tenants get wrong as well. Sometimes landlords, those who are fortunate enough to keep rents low, very low, or not even change it for a period of 3 or 5 years, and then suddenly, because let's say an example, their mortgage changes and they want to get to market rate, then suddenly there's going to be a 15-20% increase. And tenants may believe, well, I'm going to challenge this, 20% increase is unreasonable. Well, if the landlord has been lagging behind market rate, making an application to the tribunal may not work, because they look at open market rate regardless on what rental price you were to begin with. So what can you expect for the rest of the year in 2026? Well, if you're a landlord, you need to know your market, and you need to also know that if you market property at a certain rental price, that you cannot encourage those tenants or those prospective tenants to offer a higher amount. So if you don't want to feel that you're leaving money on the table, then you may want to go for the top price, okay? That's if you're advertising. Now, if you're increasing the rent, well, you also need to know the legislation and make sure you're not falling on the wrong end. Now, when it comes to tenants, same thing. You need to know your rights, and you need to know that if the rental pricing has increased in the local area, tribunal perhaps is not going to be your best route, but you need to start considering months ahead that when you get that rent increase, or having that open conversation with the landlord so you can plan ahead, and if you need to move area, then at least you're not putting yourself under pressure. I hope this video is helpful. Now, for both landlords and tenants, the fact that the Renters' Rights Act has changed so many things absolutely means that you should subscribe to my channel.